Well, first of all, thank you very much for joining us here in Dubai this week. We recognize how busy all of you are. It's a huge investment and commitment for you to make this trip. And we just want to reinforce ATP Co. is extremely honored to have you here. So thank you very much. We're going to shift gears a little bit from data. We're going to talk a little bit about airline merchandising and the customer's expectations. And I'd like to thank Amit earlier this morning in his keynote, kind of teed this up pretty well. He used a quote that said, if you control your distribution, you control your image. And that image is all about how we engage the customer. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in our panel today. And I'm going to give a little bit of context about what we're going to talk about. So first of all, how are we defining merchandising? So we got a couple definitions here. One is knowing what offers to target to what customers at the right time. You've heard that a few times today, the whole concept of dynamic offers, figuring out how to personalize, customize, get the right offer to the right person at the right time. But what we're going to focus on is the approach for promoting products and influencing consumer behavior that results in improved performance. And that's by creating visually appealing content for your customers wherever they're shopping. So that's the context of this. We've got examples in the industry right now where airlines are doing an effective job of going above and beyond just sharing their logo, their brand, their schedule, and their prices. They're putting more information in front of the consumer, letting the consumer decide how they want to shop and what they want to select for their shopping experience. Really empowers the consumer to have more control over the shopping process. We've done some research around this, and what we found is that 73% of shoppers agree that when there's an image in the shopping process for travel, they prefer it, it's easier to buy, they spend more. We have an example here of an airline on, this is an example that we shared last year, but it's one of the most effective stories we've had. We have an airline here, JetBlue, great brand, great presence, great product. They don't extensively merchandise in the third-party channels. And what this corporate OTA said is when a customer sees this, it's interesting. They know the schedule, they know what's available, they know how much it's going to cost. The challenge for airlines who aren't effectively merchandising is that they have other airlines in the exact same O&D, doesn't have to be the same price, but when a consumer sees this kind of content where they have better clarity of what the options are, what their choices are, they get to choose their own travel experience. Even when the prices are different, consumers are choosing the merchandise content over the non-merchandise content. It's a much more customer-centric approach, and they're voting with their checkbook or their credit cards. So we want to put this in context a little bit. The airline industry is about an $800 billion enterprise globally. Amazon, on their own, is about a $500 billion enterprise. We can argue if they're great merchandisers or not, but they're clearly effective. But they provide a wide range of content and merchandising for every product they sell. But imagine an experience where this is all you saw. Whatever you were buying, all you saw was the name of it and the price. It's a very different shopping experience. The conversion is going to be lower. The customer satisfaction is going to be lower. Conversion rates are going to be lower. In today's world, though, there are so many options for any product or brand to go out and produce any level of content for the consumer to help better understand what those experiences are. The problem is we're just not doing that consistently on a global basis. We're still living in a somewhat commoditized world of logos, schedules, and prices. We're missing out on those opportunities to let the customer choose, and as we're learning and we'll share it, they'll pay more. So we did some additional surveys, or we collected some survey data, and the first one is an A4A study that came out earlier this year. And what they found in this one, and it's reflecting the changing demographics of travel, is that for Gen Z, 53% of the Gen Z that were polled traveled by air. 48% of the millennials, but when you get out to the baby boomers, only 37% of those in the baby boomer category traveled in the last year. And why is that important? We know that flight shoppers under 35, they're 47% more likely to purchase an offering when there's images, when there's merchandising of airline content. This is an important metric to keep in mind. As these demographics are shifting, they expect this. And when they see it, their behavior changes. ATPCO did a study with FocusWire, and we asked a question if you would be more likely to upgrade a flight or add ancillaries if you had imagery. And it was pretty compelling. For those under 35, 74% said they were more likely to upgrade when they could better understand what the content and experience was. So really compelling from an airline standpoint to ensure they've got the right content in a customer-centric perspective. Okay, I want to make sure I didn't click past the numbers. This is more data that ATPCO has collected with our distribution partners in the Route Happy space. When the content is presented effectively, when the customers got the opportunity to decide which experience they want to select, distribution channels who effectively apply Route Happy content, they're bringing that merchandising content up to the customers, putting in the customer shopping flow, they see an 8% improvement in fare mix. So if you got branded fares, the customers deep into the shopping funnel, they're 8% better conversion to the higher fare just by presenting imagery versus not having any merchandising at all. And they also see a 2.5% increase in conversion rates when the customer sees this. So all effective things to help reinforce the value of this merchandising. So we're going to talk about this a little bit more over the next few minutes. I'm quickly going to introduce the panel. I'm going to start at the end. We've got Mark Kostling, who is the manager of online distribution for Delta Airlines. Next, we've got Justin Jovineau. He's the director of distribution and commercial strategy at TAP. And then we've got Corey Vizina, who is the director of airline revenue optimization for Priceline. And last but not least, we have Nams Balwani, who is the chief marketing officer at TP Connects. So thank you very much for joining us today. So Mark, maybe we'll start with you. I'd like to hear a little bit about Delta's efforts in the merchandising space and how you think about the decommoditization of your content as you distribute it through third-party channels. What are your views?
Absolutely, Chris. So in the past, we all know the old airline distribution model and the old cabins and products that we've had, and that was very simple. 15 years ago was just economy, business, and first class. Now, over the past decades, all the airlines have invested a lot of money in order to decommoditize their products, make the amenities, make the choices to the consumer more differentiated, and allow them to really buy products that they choose so. And now we've got the branded fares. Everybody likes them, and for the consumer, they're very complex. Even with our own JV partners, when we sit together, we always have to remember, like, what is it called with you? I mean, yes, basic economy with us, light with the others. So now it's imperative then for us as the airline, obviously in our own channel, but also for retailers to actually showcase these different products and do not anymore just have the lowest fare display that has been prevalent in the third-party retailing space for such a long time. It's completely outdated. At this point, the consumer is looking for value. They're not necessarily looking anymore for the lowest price. This is certainly something that the pandemic has shown us. And now we have to also have our partners present that at the initial shop so that the consumer can actually compare not only cross-product, but also cross-carrier without having to go back and forth. We've had these anecdotal stories where so often people take out a notepad, they're sitting in front of their computer and they're writing down the different prices of the different products and going back and forth on the screen just to then compare it, which is a horrible user experience. This is why we're partnering together with our partners here, for example, at Priceline and others, that we really are building an enhanced shopping experience where multiple fares are being shown so that the consumer actually understands what he's buying and is not all of a sudden stuck with no seat assignment, even though that they're traveling with a family of 5.
Very interesting. Thank you. And great examples to share with the audience. Nams, I'll start with a question for you. So opinions and perceptions are interesting, but hard data and facts are very compelling. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with A/B testing in the airlines that you work with, when visuals are presented versus when they're not, and what's the customer reaction been?
Okay. Firstly, hi to everyone, and thank you for having me here. I'll start by saying let's take a step back instead of jumping straight into what's the A/B testing, and I'll get to that in a second. But if we look at everything that you presented to us today, and my past experience in retail as well as hospitality, is that when you're trying to drive revenue via digital commerce, it's the full experience. There's the technology, there's the visuals, there's the video, there's the offer, and all of that comes together backed by relevance, and that relevance comes from data. And that's how you're building the right experience. So if I was to look at other industries, we don't do A/B testing on visuals versus not visuals because visuals are assumed. Just like you said, you'll never see an Amazon without visuals. And so that is the idea, I think, that where we're trying to move to is how do we make this experience for customers when they're buying a coffee cup worth $10 and they see so much information on Amazon that helps them make that choice. But when they're buying an airline ticket was for a few $100s or a few $1,000s, what they see is a flight number, a route, and a price. And that's a very sort of disparate experience. And as customers, we're all used to ordering food, seeing what we're ordering, right? Or if I want to buy a pair of shoes, I can actually use an AR app and put those shoes on my feet and see what are they going to look like with different outfits. So this is the experience that we as consumers are used to today. And so when we come into the space of booking an air ticket, we don't leave that hat behind. And so I'll say for that whatever experience we've had, or my past experience is, when we do A/B testing, visuals drive a strong uplift in revenue, but you're also doing multiple tests on different kinds of visuals rather than testing the absence of visuals. Now, coming to our experience as at TP Connects, we solve for the distribution piece. It's the airline solutions that we build where we expect the content and everything else to come from the airline, right? And then we put that together in terms of a technology solution based on NDC. So from an A/B testing perspective, I think what we've seen definitely is airlines that provide rich content do have better uplift and cross-sell and upsell versus airlines that do not.
Are you seeing that on a global basis, regardless of where the customer's shopping?
Definitely, because we work with airlines in different parts of the world with different customers, so that would be the case.
Excellent, thank you. Corey, same question for you. Priceline's one of the biggest online brands in the world for travel. You've been accelerating your merchandising efforts over the last few years. What's your view on this?
Yeah, I mean, definitely any OTA, any meta search site is going to A/B test every single thing that you see out there, from like every square centimeter's got some sort of logic behind it, some test that they ran against another one. So it's just ubiquitous that has to happen to be able to get the best experience. But the thing to remember, I think, it's difficult for us in the room who've been in airline fares and RBDs and these things for 25 plus years, is that the average customer is shopping maybe once a year for an airline ticket, maybe 4 times a year at the high end on the leisure side, but still not super frequently. So they're buying stuff on Amazon once a week or on other sites, but not always kind of routinely doing the fare shopping that all of us do every day when we're checking fares and prices and benchmarking, right? So to be able to communicate the differences to them, images are really a key way to do that, because if they're just seeing those fare options, the fare brands don't necessarily resonate to them because they have a lot of confusion between, all right, what's a fare brand, what's a cabin class, how do I differentiate the two? I shopped for something 6 months ago on one airline, is it the same on this? So the images are really a key way to do that. And we've seen, even with very simple things, you mentioned filters before, every OTA, every meta search site, when you do a search, will have this left rail that has all these different airlines on it. So if someone wants to pick Delta or TAP Portugal or any airline, they can go in and do that. But the interaction with that is relatively infrequent, just because it's text, it looks like work, and they don't want to do that. So if you put an image up at the top of the screen, we've had some ad units that do this, where you click on the image, it does the same job as the filter. They just didn't have to read it. They saw a picture of a plane that was like, oh yeah, I like that airline. Let me filter the results by that. and it produces much more engagement from the exact same activity just by showing a picture instead of having to read text. So that's one of those examples of how you can kind of use the images to help reduce the confusion, how to help give customers a better understanding of what they're buying. And obviously, too, I think the trickiest thing is, you're looking at 100 different airlines in a search result. It's really tough to try and figure out what all of those, as Nicole mentioned before, kind of what the best option is for me on this particular trip. Being able to use the images just kind of allows them to use a principle of kind of recognition over recall to be able to say, like, okay, yes, that's actually what I'm kind of looking for. Let me kind of focus here. And the images do a much better job allowing people to focus more quickly on the desired result. So we've done testing to be able to see things like different engagement with pictures over different AP bands, things like that. There's a lot of different tests that we've run around images, but I think the industry is definitely moving a lot further in that direction of like, okay, images have to become ubiquitous too, because if you've seen, and it's just mentioned with things like Amazon, but even on a hotel, you come to look for a hotel like this, we would have 70 different pictures of the hotel. You buy a rental car, there are 20 different, maybe they're generic images, but there's 20 different pictures of what type of car you might get. For airlines, we're not quite there yet, but as we saw, it took us 10 years to get down the road with NDC. Hopefully pictures won't take that long, but we're definitely moving towards that hockey stick of like, we've got to get images out there. There's a lot of complexities in doing that across when you're selling 400 airlines instead of just one, but it's definitely the direction that the industry has to go. NDC's become table stakes. So I think pictures have to be that next table stakes in the shopping experience to level set across the results that customers are seeing on other sites.
It's really insightful, Corey. Great example of a picture's worth 1,000 words, and it also reinforces the power of brand by letting them pick by the visual image of each airline versus just a list of names. Great examples. But if it takes us 10 years to get this going, I'm in trouble. So
yeah, I'm not gonna have enough
we're not
left
gonna
for
let that
10 years.
happen.
We got to go faster, guys.
Thank you, Corey. Justin, a question for you. TAP over the past couple of years has really accelerated its merchandising efforts, especially in indirect channels. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience on the effectiveness of the visual merchandising as you've jumped in?
Yeah. So the visual are very important for airlines in general and for TAP. We are living in a world of Instagram, TikTok, etc. You presented earlier that majority of the booking today are coming from millennials and Gen Z, and they are visual, video, picture are very important, and this is why we are taking it seriously to get those customers first, and then to increase the customer experience, increase the upsell rate, the engagement, the conversion rate, etc. So for the indirect channel specifically, at TAP we are partnering with Atypico. Actually, we have been live a few months ago with Route Happy, which is available in all indirect channel and GGS where Atypico has a contract with. And you can see the difference on between the left part and the right part of the screen. And before being live, basically we were promoting something that is not related to the brand, something like crew training, cleanliness of the cabin, or something like this, which is not at all related to the brand, but more something in general, and it does not differentiate ourselves from the competitor, not too much. And now being live, we want to focus. So for instance, this customer is choosing a brand basic, which is a ticket with a bag, and that's really clear that here with the bag as a picture you see what you get. So it's just a simple picture, but it's not just a simple picture, it's a picture that will push the customer to upsell to this specific brand because he knows that he will have a bag. So it's a question of displaying the right product at the right time, and also and you can on the previous slide, you can still, we are taking an opportunity to upsell and to promote some other products we have that are key for TAP. For instance, on the right of your screen, we are promoting the stopover. That's our unique point to sell as an airline. We are maybe the only airline in the world that we have a product, stopover product, where you can stay in Lisbon on your way to Europe up to 10 days free of charge. So we want to promote that. We want to make the customer aware of that. And how we do that? With a beautiful image of Lisbon and the destination. So half Lisbon landscape and half the destination landscape. And it's also participating to the brand identity. It's not just an image. It's part of our brand. And hopefully when you see this kind of image, you think about, that's TAP Stopover product. And hopefully it will work like this. So we have been live only a few months ago, and we are seeing the results already. So it's not, again, just a bag, just a picture of Stopover, but it means much more than that. And if we go further in the step of retailing, so on the next slide, we are pushing it a bit further. This morning, we heard Emirates saying the price the customer, not price the seat, and the importance of the context as well. So here, what we have done, and it's live, we are differentiating the leisure traffic and the corporate traffic. So we are able to identify who is the corporate and who is not a corporate. So on the left part of your screen, that's the classic, I would say, screenshot of what you get when you have a public classic fare. So it's a fare family of TAP where basically you have the seat and the bag and the ticket price. And we have a kind of carousel where we are promoting the seats. And hopefully you can project yourself in this seat and saying, well, that's a good seat, and I will upsell for this brand. And on the right part of the screen, you have the corporate offer. So today, a corporate offer is not just a discounted price. The tendency for airlines is not to say, we have a corporate contract together, you will have discounted price. No, that's not true anymore, at least at TAP and most of our competitors. What we are doing also when we have a corporate contract, we are giving some attributes. So that's fake attributes on the picture. I am not reading our corporate fares today. But we are giving attributes, and that's part of the product construction, product offering. And then we need to make the customer aware of that. And the corporate funnel is very complex. You have the TMC, you have the self-booking tool, you have the corporate, you have the airline, you have the GDS, you have a lot of steps. So, and here, and it's live, we are able to say, well, you have a corporate contract, this is what you are entitled to. So that's a very strong differentiator for us versus our competitor, because I'm not aware of a lot of airlines live with this kind of differentiation. And you can see that on this fake example for attributes, if you book the corporate, if you have a contract and you go with that, so you have an image of a lady relaxing and you have the selection of the seat for free, of a comfort seat, you have the fast track or flexibility, all those attributes that are very important for the corporate customer. So personalization is key. We talked about it this morning, and it's key also up to the end, not just on the offer construction, but also on the visualization for the traveler.
Thank you. A great use case with that special product that TAP offers for your stopovers in Portugal. It's great to hear how it's been working so far. Thank you. Mark, a question for you. Delta's large global network airline. I recently read the direct channel share at Delta continues to grow, hitting some very impressive numbers, but you can't live off of domestic US bookings alone. You've got to sell in your non-home markets. Can you tell us a little bit about how this visual merchandising and providing the customer the right context has helped Delta?
Absolutely. Yes, it offers us obviously the option to educate, to really showcase Delta's products and the services, the amenities, the UPAs, everything that we have in terms of then images to really educate the customers of what we present and what we provide in their respective markets. Whether they want to go more upstream, they want to fly Delta One, they see the exact plane that we're flying on that route. They see that we have, for example, then the A350 with the Delta One suites, and they can really see themselves, as Justin also pointed it out, with the experiential pictures. Don't you just show an empty seat. It's not you imagining yourself sitting in it, but once you have a really great image of somebody sitting in it, then this is a much more thought and emotions invoking proposition. So we really appreciate that about the merchandising piece on the international side, especially where you do need to do a little bit more of education, where your brand is not that well known. I mean, on the domestic side, Chris, yes, you know, for Delta, people know Delta. They come to our website, they go directly, they know exactly which product they want, and they pick it. But as you've seen in the screenshots from the first part of my first question, the shopping experience is also geared towards the customer being easily able to find what the products are and clicking through the different experiences and then choosing the right one for them. And that applies to internal channels as well as external channels. So we really work closely with our partners to hope that they adopt and utilize Route Happy for the UPA content to actually enable them to do the similar merchandising that we can do on our own site.
Thanks. Very interesting. I may ask Justin just for a view on this, because you've got a well-known European brand, but small local market. How do you foresee the work that you're doing with Route Happy and visual merchandising helping you in the non-home markets in America or in Asia?
Yeah, I hope it will help us a lot. Basically, we are in Tapper, Portugal. We have a home market, a small home market. Portugal is 10 million people, so we need to have a brand strategy and to have a consistency across all the markets. And hopefully, by having this kind of a strategy and this product, it will help us to have a consistency, whatever the channel is. Could be direct channel, indirect channel, whatever. If it's in France, in Portugal, in the US, we want the customer to have the kind of same experience and personalized experience as well. So we are waiting. We are expecting a lot of that, and it's not just also consistency. That's also a transparency and accuracy. We have seen that with COVID, this is what the customer want. They want transparency. They want to know they want to know why they are paying this price, etc. So transparency, consistency, accuracy. This is our objective, which in all markets.
Thank you, Justin. I appreciate that. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Corey, we shared some data from a couple different studies that happened earlier this year about the behavior of Gen Z and millennials as they become a larger part of the travel market. What's Priceline's experience been with these growing demographics?
Yeah, I mean, I think with those markets, and stereotypes can be easy to generalize people, but also there are some stereotypes which do maybe lend into some behaviors. And I think definitely the focus on mobile and the differences in where they're shopping. So they're not maybe going to a meta search engine necessarily, but maybe they are. Maybe they're going to a place like TikTok or a viral video or seeing ad rolls on YouTube. They're not necessarily going to like a search engine like a Google to say like cheap flights to France. They're maybe starting their journey somewhere else. You have to be able to get to find those customers where they are. So we launched a new ad campaign this year, and it was multi-threaded, the same way we've had to be multi-threaded on the connectivity side with supply sources. Similarly, we had standard TV ads, but we also placed TV ads around events like the Super Bowl by reaching out to social media influencers and having them kind of be brand advocates for us, and just having a multi-threaded approach there. So that was very beneficial for us. We won 2 awards, one for best PR and one for best use of social in those campaigns. That was a way to kind of reach that audience. But another thing too is a topic that has gotten a lot of buzz, and there's a lot of buzz around a lot of things that tends to come and go as fads do, but generative AI is another one, right? So if you've got people continuously using things like mobile phones, certain generations, and I think the younger generations get this habit a lot of not wanting to be on a phone call with someone, not going to call somebody and ask a question. So maybe in a previous generation or other times, like half the people who would call about a hotel were trying to figure out, like, is this really a good neighborhood, or can I really get a pool at this property? Using generative AI, you can kind of build results into the searching that they're doing, into the shopping that they're doing, and be able to say, like, okay, yes, this is a good hotel in the middle of Midtown Manhattan. It's near vegan restaurants, if that's what you're looking for, and be able to provide really customized, detailed, specific to that consumer results in the AI response to be able to help the shopping process convert. If it's an airline they've never heard before, how can you help convince them that that airline is a great airline? Like, those are the types of things that I think will be more helpful for the younger audiences that are on mobile versus maybe a older generation like mine or older that are maybe more used to using desktop. So I think if you're thinking about things like Gen Z and millennials, It's kind of like, where are they shopping? How do you find them? And then once they get to your site, and it's probably going to be on a mobile phone, how do you convince them to convert and give them the opportunity to find the best value, the best airline mix for them of exactly not just the itinerary, but what specific details do I really want? So I don't think there's any data on like per se, like, oh, they want check-in bags, but this one wants things like paid seats. Like, they all want the best value that they can get and the best experience for the most reasonable price, and helping them understand that value. Maybe generative AI and mobile is a way to do that we haven't had to explore before.
And one more sign, unfortunately, for our generation is no more William Shatner promoting you've targeting a younger demographic in your advertising now. Thank you, Corey. Nams, a question for you on, you gave us some great insight on other industries and merchandising and then leading into airlines. But in the airline space today, what are some of the biggest shopping gaps that you are seeing in the merchandising space that could, ATPCO and the airlines in this room as an industry could help improve and close?
Sure. So I'll start by saying that when we look at customers who use our solutions, there's already the destination is decided, right? So it's not a sort of where does the customer want to travel to. They know that. They come onto the solution. They're looking for search results or the search that tells them what's the best offer. And our aim is to make this as seamless an experience as possible. So how do we bring the fare brands alongside the ancillaries so that the overall experience that even when a travel agent gets when they log on is they're able to see all the information seamlessly and complete that booking. And I think to that end, the most of the work that we do is how do we enable good, rich content from airlines onto the platform. And once they are onto our platform, how do we then show that in a way that intuitively completes the entire sale? And that's backed, of course, by content differentiation. So it's really the overall package.
Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe Corey, for you as a big online brand who's dealing with hundreds of airlines with different needs and content types, what are your gaps?
Yeah, I mean, definitely coverage is really important for us. So to be able to get all of the airlines in that single source of truth is the previous world has kind of gone away of just being able to connect to maybe one GDS and get everything back. You now have a multi-threaded solution where you need to have connections to NDC, maybe connections to aggregators, still GDS connections, maybe NDC over GDS connections. You've got a breadth of things that you need to be able to connect to be able to get all that good content as airlines start pulling things out of Edifact and others. And I think Finnair mentioned that they saw like a conversion and attach of like 1 in 100 in Edifact, 1 in 10 on NDC, and 1 in 2 for direct. So there's a big difference in that attach. So how do we explain when we're trying to sell something like an ancillary to somebody and explain what they get? So across that multi-threaded universe of 30 maybe plus different supply sources, Route Happy is really helpful for us to be able to say, okay, we're going to pull in all the amenity data, we're going to pull in all the UTAs, we're going to show them 7 attributes that are uniform across every fare brand and let them know, like, okay, this might be the cheapest, but you're not going to get a check bag, you're not going to be able to get a seat assignment, you're not going to be able to, these things you want, move over here, and to have a single source of truth across all of those supply sources is extremely helpful when, again, dealing with 400 airlines that are covered. Route Happy is maybe the best way to get that information all in one place, and then to be able to layer in things like pictures on top of it is just extremely helpful for us to just have one place to go to get a ton of information. But fidelity is really the most important thing.
Thank you very much. I think Amit's going to be the most quoted person at this event, but he talked again earlier today about own your distribution and you control your image. A question, Mark, for you, Mark, about some of the challenges that we've heard with airlines unlocking the value of merchandising is really ownership and control of your content. Can you tell us a little bit about what Delta's done to try to really advance your merchandising ambitions in this space?
Yeah, we work very, very closely with the Route Happy design team, ensuring that our images are up to date, that they're targeted in the right channels, that when we have new initiatives, new products or services coming out, that we also provide the appropriate imagery for that. Additionally, as I'm also in the fortunate and not so fortunate position sometimes of content control, we have tools and IT tools in place to discover nefarious third parties, as we politely call them, or bad players or bad apples in the OTA space that it should not have our content, that do have our content through other ways that we then try to prevent and cut them off from, because they are not representing our brand correctly. They are not utilizing and following our carrier distribution policy. So let's just say they're not utilizing our branded fare names, but they're creating their own. Adds to the confusion of the consumer, because obviously they don't understand. Then it's like, hey, I thought Delta that this is called main cabin. Why is it being called something completely different if I go to this third-party website? So we're trying to break that down. And as you know, in the past, we've been a strong advocate and supporter of ATPCO's, the term that shall not be named around here anymore, but the next generation storefront, as it was called back then. We understand the complexities that were surrounded by that, to bring a standard on a global scale and bring that out there. So totally get that. But now we obviously support your new data standards that you're providing, and that's really helpful for us as well and for the third parties. And then we work directly with all of our third-party distributors to jointly really get them to the next level of display of our content that includes the brand images, the product images, and everything else.
A common theme that we hear across the industry is the importance of those standards just to accelerate and simplify onboarding and adoption. Thank you, Mark. Nams, a question for you along the same lines. TP Connects is a big technology enabler for the industry. You play a key role on the marketing side of ensuring that all of this content is effectively displayed or distributed and displayed. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the challenges or hurdles your company is experiencing in managing all this content that's coming through?
I think in terms of the fact that the content is coming through and technical hurdles or technological hurdles, we can definitely solve for. But from the perspective of, are we giving the right offer to the right customer at the right time? What we need is customer profiling, we need data, and then we need good content. So from that perspective, I think our challenges are more, how do we as a distribution technology provider get access to the kind of data that enables us to put the right offer in front of that travel agent when they log on and they perform a search query. So at the end of the day, without having the context of data and the right offer that can be made at that point in time, you can't build revenue, because revenue is about relevance today. So what we aim for is exactly that, is how do you provide the best offer, but how is that backed by, we don't want 500 offers on screen, so which offer is the one that's going to make the most sense? And we definitely need, I think, a bigger push towards data aggregation, a single customer view, it's built in, whether it's corporate or it's leisure, and we can use those signals effectively to present the right piece.
Those are great insights, and it reinforces what both Tom and Amit said this morning about there's a lot of data out there, figuring out how to derive the right insights and make it usable for the industry is a huge enabler.
Yes.
So a big opportunity there.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. We've got just a couple minutes left, so I'm going to let, I got one last question that I will pose to Justin. As you started this journey for more visual merchandising, we've talked a lot about the shopping path, but there's tremendous opportunities for airlines to engage with customers who have purchased a ticket, so that post-purchase experience. Can you tell us a little bit about how TAP is thinking about merchandising to customers and taking that customer-centric approach?
Yes, absolutely. So it will be part of the scope, the post booking, and we talked this morning about having data to understand better the customer, understand better the context, which is not so easy in a shopping way, in the shopping part of the funnel. But when we are at the post booking, then we know quite of everything on the customer, because there is a booking already. So we know how many people will be in the booking, will travel, if it's a night flight, if it's a day flight, if it's a Monday, Tuesday, or a Saturday to Saturday, which is a bit more leisure, etc., etc. So there is more opportunity for the airline to personalize the offer. For instance, you have a night flight, you want to promote the seat, a comfort seat, or even a business class cabin, because you know that you will have a better comfort, and you don't do it, the customer is not willing to pay at the first when he's buying the ticket, because it's a lot of money. But maybe 2 months after, 3 months after, 15 days before departure, then you have a new budget. You forgot that you pay. You kind of forgot that you paid already 1,000 euros for a ticket. So you have a new budget, and you say, oh, what if I add 100, 150 euros for a very good seat because it's a night flight, and you receive an email at the end of the day, you are tired after a day of work, and say, yeah, let's book these seats. And it's everything about the right offer at the right time. And again, the visualization here is very important, because it's something out of the budget of the traveler initially. So you need to justify via the picture that you want to have these seats, for instance, or the lounge or the fast track or whatever it is, depending on your context. And you need to project yourself via this picture in this seat. You need to say, oh yeah, this seat is cool. I'm going to relax during these night flights. And this is what we try to achieve, at least via email. So email will be especially for the direct customer, booking on flightap.com, and also manage my booking and during the check-in process. And yeah, depending on the airlines, we have different strategy for manage your booking. So you may not target all the customer, but only the direct customers, depending on who has access to manage your booking.
That's a great use case, showing somebody after a long day that they can have a better experience on a night flight like that. That's brilliant. So first of all, I'd like to thank the panel for some great insights on how you are working with your customers to leverage visual merchandising to drive better experience for them, better outcomes for you. And it's been great to hear from a company's perspective, a major distributor in the B2C space, and some big airline brands that the consumers are reacting positively when this is presented, and everybody wins. So thank you for sharing your insights. This has been really, really interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.